Welcome to Open Home. Today we're gonna do something a little bit different and have an interview with Dom. Say hi, everybody, Dom.
Hi.
That's Dom. Everybody knows Dom. But basically, the reason I wanted to talk with Dom today was because I know that a lot of us want to be using this time to grow closer to God and to be more present with God. But there's all these other impulses and desires that are getting in the way of being able to do that. And Dom's been on this journey over the past year or so where he said to me a year ago, he was like, the amount of love that I'm taking in is not equal to the amount of love that I'm giving out, and I cannot keep operating at this kind of a spiritual deficit for long. And it's been just this journey of him like learning how to Sabbath better and rest more and be more present with God. And so he's actually been seeing a lot of the fruit that he's been hoping for. I think has been coming to fruition through the COVID season. And I know that that's something that a lot of us want. So I wanted to have him give us some of the insights that he's been learning from that process. The first question is, when you ended up in that place where you felt like you were operating at a spiritual deficit and that it just wasn't working and your relationship with God wasn't enough. How did you end up there? What kind of forces led you there, and what was that like? So go for it, Dom.
Yeah. Looking back, it's interesting because I think when I was in that place, I was more thinking that it was just a function that I was signed up for one too many things. I'm an elementary school counselor. I think most of you know that, but I was in my third year doing that, which is I'm in a helping profession. So I was helping people all day at work, working with people, giving out a bunch of love, trying to support families and kids and teachers. Before that, when I started my faith, I was doing Young Life. I became a Young Life team lead. I was doing a college ministry. So I was just always in these places where I was giving a lot out. I also just really valued, and we all do, but friendships were really important to me and Sam. So we put a heavy burden on ourselves, I think, in terms of just the frequency of which we should be getting together with certain friends. And our schedule was just wacky. I feel like I was always running from one place to another to be with someone. And what was interesting is, when we were talking, Caleb, I think initially I was I was so burned out. I felt like I just had to quit things. I didn't know what it was, but I felt like I needed to just open up my schedule. And I think that's still true. And I did a lot. And I know we talked about a lot of that work, Caleb, but I did a lot of that and quit a lot of things and opened up my schedule. Sam and I set limits for ourselves around how much we felt like it was good to see people during the week, how much we felt like we could take in or do healthy wise to stay healthy, and kind of set limits in that sort of way. But that was the beginning of a process. And I think if I look back now, it was the way I would answer that question is what was really lacking in my life. It was that I needed to quit some things, but also what was lacking was just habits that put myself in positions where I feel like God was able to fill me up with his love.
Do you think that the difference between what you were feeling and what you needed, do you think looking back at it that it was just a normal process of everybody's spiritual life that you're going to enter stages of feeling like that? Or do you think that there were deeper issues that led you if were there factors in the way that you were approaching your faith that if you had approached those differently, you don't think you would have ended up there?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think during that time, I was just so focused on trying to control things and figure out practical things that I could do to change the way that I was feeling. So I think I was really focused on myself. I was inwardly focused and focused on the things that I felt like I could do, I could control to get myself feeling a way. Basically, I was trying to control my way into feeling God's love more. And I guess I felt like I was doing that I think that's why I was focused so much on well, what do I need to give up and what do I need to add? And I think over time, like, Jesus talks about like seek first his kingdom and all the other things will be added to you. I feel like my perspective has changed a bit, and it's made me focus more on like what are these habits that like God's inviting me into, and how do I get those in my life so that I can take my eyes off myself and stop trying to control things. So that's kind of a deeper way of saying it. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I do think I had like a deep, like a spiritual. I think I got myself into a habit of just control this, control that. Don't let things fall apart at the seams. Um, and it was really exhausting.
All of us have that like assumption that we bring into our faith that this is about the way that it makes me feel, and
Yeah,
feeling disappointed when we don't feel the way that we did when we initially like were first interacting with Jesus. Like I haven't met anybody who has had a major like conversion experience and felt really tight with God who doesn't get disappointed 2 3 years down the line. So it's been good to see how you're willing to address those issues of like, oh, actually I'm looking at my faith in terms of what does it give me in terms of feelings, but I really want to have a shift in perspective where it's more about becoming selfless, and it's more about um, not having expectations for what I'm gonna feel every time that I try to connect with God. That there's a deeper
yeah,
connection that can happen as you learn how to ride out not feeling things
yeah,
like for a time.
yeah. And that was definitely true for me. And like I still battle that, but just basing like taking my temperature gauge, or I guess just where I'm at with Jesus based upon like how happy do I feel or how peaceful do I feel. Um, so yeah, that's definitely been I feel like these habits have definitely been a transition for me where I've been able to like take my eyes off that a little bit.
Yeah, but I think there was also when we were dealing with these problems like a year ago, there was definitely like scheduling problems, right? So
Yeah.
give an example of like what your week was usually like, and
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it was basically like we. I mean, all day with school counseling's crazy. Like, I love it, and I think I'm gonna want to do it forever. And I remember telling Caleb, like, I feel like it's not my job. I kept saying, I feel like it's not my job because I love my job, but there were parts of my job where I was just like in caring for people, I was doing way too many things. So I just felt like I was constantly running from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. So long story short, the school day, the work day was chaos. And then we'd come home in terms of scheduling that we'd have at home, like we'd probably have 3 or 4 nights a week where we were meeting up with friends. And then like it felt like most weekends we'd go out of town and we'd do this or do that. There was just very little unscheduled time. Like I was always ruled by the calendar. I had very little space for spontaneity and um, yeah, just like or just rest or just like figuring out like not knowing what to do. Like I was always on my way to something. Um, so specific examples were probably like yeah, a lot of seeing friends, like going out of town on the weekends, which are good things, but like over time it made it so that I couldn't get my feet set and couldn't get habits in place that were really healthy for me.
so
Yeah.
what do you think started to change those habits and that way of seeing God?
Well, honestly, I mean, you were super helpful. Like I met with you. Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a couple like colliding pieces all at the same time. One was like I was motivated because I'm a 7 on the Enneagram. Like I don't want to feel pain. I don't want to feel discomfort. And I was feeling really overwhelmed and stressed, and I wasn't used to that. Like I was used to being like a joy bomb.
Yeah.
And I felt like a lot of that was like zapped. So I was like, God, like get me out of this place. So I was super motivated. I was meeting with you, and I think we probably just started that, and we met like every other week. And you're not a counselor, but I feel like you did a lot of really great counseling with me. I'm pastors are counselors, I guess too, but whatever you did was really helpful. Just hearing me and having someone to talk to and process things with, and like pull more and more truth out and get a little bit deeper and deeper and help me surface things that I like was kind of feeling but couldn't really name them yet. Um, so that was helpful. At the same time, I was like, one of my friends, his name's Claude, and he was someone that like kind of introduced me to Jesus in college. He was a pastor of the church I was at in Bellingham. He'd moved to Memphis, and he had a podcast series on spiritual formations, which were like these spiritual disciplines. And I started listening to that just because it was like his first podcast, and I could hear his voice, and it was like exactly what I needed. So it was like this. Those were probably the three biggest pieces. They all came together at once, but putting myself in those spaces was helpful. And at the time, and I'll talk about this I'm sure later, but like I did. It's not like I had an absence of spiritual habits. Like for the most part, I would wake up and I would have like my quiet time in the morning or whatever it was. I'd wake up and I'd try to pray, and I would read my Bible, and like I did get a lot of life and love from that certain practice, even when I was feeling exhausted. It's just that one thing of that 30-minute chunk in the morning, it wasn't enough juice to sustain the wild way I was living and giving out for the rest of the week.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely broadened and developed and been redefined and had perspective shifts on that have been more helpful. But to answer your question, I think those were the three things that mostly like made me want or started the process, I would say.
Yeah.
I guess I could say one more thing. This was after the fact, but I had this moment, and Sam and I went to Thailand this summer, and I was like right in the turmoil of like my conversations with you and listening to these podcasts and like wanting that change. And I was feeling really, really anxious, like in Krabi, which is like a beautiful beach, and I like wasn't enjoying it. I got stung by a jellyfish in the face, which sucked too. But I was like, how do I enjoy this when I'm getting stung when I swim, I'm getting bit by mosquitoes, and this is like supposed to be the highest place with Zika, or what, I don't think it was Zika, but something, highest place where this mosquito-borne illness is there. And I was having quiet one of the mornings, just like my typical morning time, and I just started like weeping. I didn't really know why at first, but then I look back at like I guess during that time I was thinking about like where the source of that wanting to control things came from. I think it came to a head that like the difficulty I was having on that vacation was the fact that I couldn't do anything about it. I couldn't control it. And I think that came from a place. I was able to look back at like my childhood, and I saw where this need there's some instability, a lot of instability at times. And I saw this need of like, if I think I was living out of this place where if I don't control things, like everything's going to fall apart and be unstable again. So I had very little like trust in God there. Again, I feel like these are connected in a way that like, I think what kept me running at a rate that was so fast was that I was trying to like control things. Like I wanted to make sure that like all my friendships were going to be like top notch, and like I wasn't going to mess that up. And I wanted to make sure that like I was doing all I could do to keep myself healthy and all I could do to help others out, and like just trying to like control more than I could control is another way of saying I think what made me so exhausted is like I was signing up for too many things, but the function of that I think was control. So that was also another piece. Like that was a big realization moment for me, like a breakdown emotionally that helped lead to me wanting to do some work.
Yeah. Yeah, and then some other pieces, like I saw you making choices to change stuff, like at first blocking off 4 hours to do Sabbath, and then seeing life from that, and then growing it more and more to where you're doing like full days and thinking about how you're going to incorporate it in your days, and also just you didn't back then. It was like if you wanted to schedule something with you, it was like 2 months out because you were going to fly somewhere every weekend and you were going to hang out with someone every single night, and just realizing that wasn't like that wasn't going to work long term.
And I remember our first conversation, you were like, I think you need a Sabbath, like a day of Sabbath, like just what would it look like to take 1 day a week? And I was like, dude, there's no way. There's no way. Like, I was like, there's no way. Like,
there was,
for one, I'm like, there's no way. Like, if I tell that to Sam, like, there's no way that's gonna be cool. That she's like, hey, um, and Sam's in this journey with me now too. Like, we're both Sabbathing together, and it's been awesome. But like, yeah, I was like, there's no way that I'm gonna be like, hey, actually, I can't go away on weekends because I can't do anything on, or Sunday's my day that I'm not gonna schedule things. Because for me, that was like that, and it still is. That was like what I needed for my Sabbath day. I don't think that's what everyone needs, but mine was like, I need to not have a calendar that rules my life. I need to like give that up. So like not that I can't see people on that day, but I'm not gonna plan for it until that day comes, and I'm like, oh, let's go see some friends. So anyways, I didn't think that was real, but it took one step of like, yeah, and I feel like this is so often how God works in my life, is like, it took me to the willingness to take like a half step forward, and then like I feel like his love would just like met me there and tore up my heart and gave me another half step, to a point where like now it's like, oh, a day is doing a Sabbath day is like the joy of my week. Like, it's the energy that it's everything I look forward to Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Like, I'm like, Sabbath's coming, and I'm excited for it. And then like, it's what carries me through the week. I mean, that's not the only spiritual practice that I've tried to do like in the last little while. But that's definitely one of the ones. It's probably the primary one where I'm getting like most of what I need from, and that's really like sustaining me, I think.
Yeah, and I remember you were absorbing stuff. You were reading books and stuff. So what books? You mentioned the podcast that your friend did. Tell us like just the content that you helped you along the way. Like,
Yeah, so that podcast it's called Spiritual Formation. It's by Fellowship Memphis. That's his church. That one's basically like each episode is going through one of these spiritual disciplines. For those of you that don't know, like, I don't know, Caleb, you might know more than this, but I know the book I'm reading right now is by Richard Foster, and it's called Spiritual Disciplines or something like that.
Celebration
And
of Discipline. Everybody's reading it right now. If you're not reading it right now, start reading it. It's a good COVID-19 book.
Yeah, it's really good. So I'm reading that right now. Each chapter is going through one of these disciplines. And yeah, you can read it. Do read it. Discipline is one of those, I feel like, taboo Christian words that you think of legalism and you think of like doing things for the wrong reason. But the idea of discipline here is like just literally that God uses these avenues like Sabbath, like solitude, like prayer, like meditation, like Jesus-centered meditation, like silence and slowing down and simplicity. Like, he uses these ways to like give you love, joy, and peace. It's not like, oh, you do these things, so here's your reward. It's like God just made the world that way so that when we do these things that are healthy for us, like that's where we oftentimes like receive him. It's like when we put ourselves in those spaces. So that's what that book's about. Each chapter is like on a different one of those habits, or if you can call them disciplines, you can call them habits. Like, it's on one of those. It's kind of like what the podcast is about. I also read Subversive Sabbath by AJ Swoboda. I think you recommended that one to me. And to be honest, like, I liked it, but I didn't like it as much as the one I liked more was the John Mark Comer one that just came out. That felt really helpful to me. Like, I was reading that right before we got on quarantine. And then I finished it up like a couple weeks in, and it's called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. That one goes on, that one's less, it's not the full-fledged of all the spiritual disciplines, but I feel like it goes deeper into the ones that are more geared towards like eliminating that feeling of rush or being ruled by your calendar in your life. So that one talks about simplicity and slowing and silence and solitude and Sabbath. I love that book. So yeah, those are some resources that I feel like I read that also gave me like, it just motivated me to do some practical work to like actually get these in place.
So what are the habits that you're doing right now? Like, especially just think over the last couple of weeks.
So Sunday is our Sabbath day, which is great. That day I just do everything I can that makes me like, I saw it written this way. I forgot what book it was, but like it said Sabbath is the day to do all the things that make you spontaneously combust with joy and wonder and praise in God. And I like love it said that way. So that's like my framework for that. Is like, what can I do to just like feel like I'm gonna spontaneously combust with joy and love and like wonder.
With
And
that
so
painting behind you, I think that's what happened there.
yeah. So I painted this in the first 10 minutes, my first Sabbath day. No, I'm just kidding. No, so that day is like a lot of like, there's something about the ocean that I really like. I feel like I haven't been utilizing the ocean as much, but like it's like going down to a place where I can just like gaze at something and be in wonder. We live by Richmond Beach, so there's a certain tree down there that I like to walk to and sit underneath. I love riding my bike. I feel like that's one of those activities that I'm not necessarily like super. I don't feel super present, but I do enjoy. Like I don't feel super present with Jesus. Like I'm just thinking about like turn left here and switch gears here and like. But it's something I really enjoy. That gives me fun. So sometimes I'll go on a bike ride. This is gonna sound so stupid, but we have 8 chickens, and I straight up like sitting in my chicken coop, and I call it observing the chickens. Sounds so boring, but I sit there and I just study these great chickens that I like. So weird for you, probably great for me.
Not weird for me, but weird for many others.
Yeah, sometimes we'll like go on a walk. We often go on a walk with each other, go on a walk with friends. Oh, a big thing that I don't do that day is I don't use my phone like at all. That's so helpful. We basically don't use screens. Like we're not like watching Netflix, and it's not like a rule. Like it's not like, oh, like God's gonna hate you if you like watch an episode that day. Like that's just for us. Like we found that we don't feel super rested when we're like constantly looking for updates on our phone when we're looking at a screen. So like I don't use a screen that day. It's interesting because I mean the only thing I use a screen on Sundays right now is like our church. Like, but that's because it's online. So I turn it on at 5 o'clock for that, and then I like don't look at any notifications or anything. I actually turn off notifications on my phone. So that's been really helpful. But that's what that Sunday looks like. So that's one part of the week. Daily, it's more like I wake up. Again, I try to like set a bedtime and like a wake time for my phone. Like I'm treating it almost like it's a kid that like I'm trying to keep on a different schedule than me. So I try to get up and not grab my phone at all. Like my phone's usually in a different room, and then I have the same chair that I sit in, and I sit there and I roll down the window and I just like look outside. And that's usually a time of like where I usually start the morning with like some stretching and some meditation where I'm just like trying to. It's an interesting kind of meditation because I'm trying to like get my heart like prepared to be in like a place of prayer, and a place where I'm ready to read. And sometimes that takes like 30 to 40 minutes, and I have to just let this like flow of a million trillion thoughts like run through my mind. And that's the hardest part is I feel like it's hard to sit there when you're like, I'm not hearing from God right now. Like I'm just thinking about a million things, but I feel like God like uses that time to like clear all that out of me so that I can receive him. So I sit there, I meditate, and then I'll usually move into some prayer, and then I'll do a little bit of like reading a book, or I don't always read. I don't always read my Bible every morning. Like it kind of just depends. Sometimes I'll just meditate and pray. Like that's more core for me. But probably 4 days a week I'll read my Bible. Like I'm reading through Luke right now. So and I don't have like not that this is good, but personally I don't have like a reading plan. Like I just read until I feel like I receive something to like meditate further on, and then I do that. And then on Tuesdays, so that's mostly my daily thing. I try to at night, like either like close, like bookend my day with, I'm not just going straight from like TV show to bed. Like I'm trying to like pray, or like read a book before bed. It just feels healthier. Like if Sam's going to sleep, I'll just like sit there in quiet for 5 minutes with the lights on and just like kind of run through the day. On Tuesdays, we pray together. which was honestly like it was kind of hard at first. Like it didn't feel as natural as I think we wanted it to. But now at this point, like Sam and I have been praying together on Tuesday nights, and it feels really great. I think it's done something like great for our relationship and vulnerability in front of each other, and like we can sink into that moment a lot more naturally than we used to be able to, which I think is like kind of what most of these habits and disciplines are like. They're like hard at first, and then the more you get used to them, like the more comfortable they get.
Yeah. So I have a question about that, because I know for a lot of our people, there's a lot of frustration when it comes to trying to reach out and hear from God, and feeling like they're not hearing it from Him, or feeling like His presence isn't there. So two questions. Like the first is, what is it like when you're present with God? Like, what does that feel like and look like?
When I'm present with God, what is it like?
What is it like? Yeah, like, because I feel like some people expect, if God were to be present with them, they're supposed to like hear something, or it's supposed to be some really weird external like voice or something. I mean, I know most people don't think it's that direct, but I just suspect that there is an openness to the subtlety of the presence of God with with you, that I think a lot of spiritually mature people have. That it, it can be helpful for other people to hear it described. Like, what does that feel like? And then I'll ask the second question after that.
Okay, yeah. For that, I would say like I think in broad stroke, the way I would define that is like a sense of love, joy, and peace. Um, but it's not always that. So like that's like a broad stroke in terms of like um, when I feel like I'm really, really maybe that's just something that when I'm present with God, I feel extra grateful for. Sometimes that comes, and sometimes it doesn't. Honestly, if I'm being honest, I guess it's like other times, like I said, it's like I'm having these like it's like a moment of insight. Like I'll be sitting there and then I'll think about something that was like oh, you should text that person, or you should like do that, or here's a solution to that problem. And I'm like, oh, like I guess I could look at that like, oh, that came from me. Great. Well, I'm trying to have quiet, so like get that out of here. But sometimes that's like I think that's God. That's like that's honoring the fact that I'm sitting there and I'm not multitasking. So it's like an insight, or like a shower thought. Like we always have the best thoughts in the shower. Like I feel like that's like that chair over there is like my second shower of the day, where I get to like sit in that chair and just have like a flow of good thinking.
Yeah.
So sometimes I feel like that's God being present with me. Like I said, other times it's like I have a bunch of anxious thoughts running through my mind, and honestly, I feel like at times I think that that's even like God speaking to me and like letting things make their way through me so that I can bring them to Him.
Yeah. I think you may have already kind of answered this, but kind of a follow-up question is, what would you say to somebody who feels like they're trying to reach out to God and feel His presence, but doesn't think that God's speaking to them?
Like, yeah, first I'd say don't stop. Like, I love the story of, it's in Luke, like I just read it, so it's funny you asked this question, but Jesus tells a parable about like some neighbor who knocks on another neighbor's door and asks for something, but it's like the middle of the night. And Jesus is like, they're not going to answer the door necessarily because even if it's because they love you, like they're not just going to answer the door. Like he uses the word shameless audacity. Like the idea is like don't stop. And he does it on his teaching and prayer too. He's like, don't stop. Just like literally, like you will be answered if you are like the persistent person who is knocking. So like as much as that sucks to sit in that space and at least not be able to like feel like you are interpreting or perceiving the voice of God, like keep going to that space. I think the parable he uses is also like an unjust judge. And he's like, if the judge isn't going to do it because they're just, they're going to do it because you like sat there and knocked on their door enough, and they're just like annoyed at you, basically.
Yeah.
You can find it if you want. It's in Luke. It's Luke. Do you know where it is? Do you know where it is?
I don't know where it is, but they can find it.
Dude, I thought pastors are supposed to know where everything is.
We got the internet for that now.
I'm just kidding, dude. It's like Luke 8 or something. But yeah, that's it. So I would say don't give up. And like also like consider like broadening your definition of what it is that is hearing from God. It's like really infrequent that I feel like I get like a super direct instruction from God. Like I feel like God speaks to me through not just like a voice, but like through all of my senses. Not like necessarily smell, but like or taste, but like he speaks to me through my body, like a change in how I'm feeling. He speaks to me through other people. Um, speaks to me through, like I said, sometimes it's even through my anxiety or through like that's an example of a feeling. It speaks to me through um yeah, insights and thoughts and like God, I feel like God uses everything around me to speak to me through nature. Um so it's not just like an audible voice that's like so anyways, consider thinking more about that and praying about that. Another thing is like yeah, I usually I start my prayer with like I'm not like just going straight into it. It's some like really simple word like God, I'm here and like I want you today. So like just be here with me. And then I'm like I don't talk for a while. So I think what that is like consider like increasing your listening time. I think a lot of people think prayer is just talking, but like I think prayer is listening.
Yeah.
Um, so like sit still and be silent and listen, even when it's uncomfortable and anxious thoughts are coming up. Like stay there. That's what I would say.
Yeah, man. Final question. Why is it worth it? Why is all this Sabbath time and prayer and spiritual disciplines, why is it worth it?
Because it gives you like what you've always wanted. Like, I don't know how to answer that better, but like it gives you like it like gives you love, joy, and peace that when it comes, you're like that's all I've ever wanted. Like you I don't know. I don't know if you know what that's like if you don't feel like you've received that yet. Like I should because it wasn't that long ago when I was there, but like it fills the empty parts in you that you didn't even know needed to have the love, joy, and peace of Jesus. So it's like, yeah, it's worth it because it's like Psalm 23 where it's like the Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. It's like you get there and that rings so true. Like I lack nothing when I feel like when I'm in Jesus' presence. Um, so it's worth it because it'll feel like you don't lack anything. Yes.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know.
That's
Like
good enough. That's good
yeah,
enough.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think that's it for our discussion. Thank you, Dom, for sharing your rich inner life with us. And if you, the watcher of this video, happen to watch this at openhomechurch.org on Sunday, starting at 5:30 p.m., then we now have a Zoom breakout that we would love to have you at. So click on the link below. Peace, you guys.